Hi, everyone. Thanks very much for that. Welcome, good evening, good morning, and good afternoon in the various parts of the world that you are. I'm Marilyn Gan, Senior Vice President and Head of Asia Pacific for VMO Air. Welcome to the first Rumble of 2022. This is a continuation of the first Rumble that we heard in May last year, where we had Gerry and Jep as well join in the session. So I'd like to welcome them both again to this very interesting session today. Gerry Butler, who's the Chief Marketing Officer at Merck's Aviation, and Jep Thornton, CEO of Airline. Welcome, guys. Now I had to Google the definition of a rumble just before starting this show, this event, and it means a street fight between two rival gangs. So I'm hopeful that we're not going to see that this evening. I'm hopeful that we will have a very good intellectual debate on the various topics, and there are many, and that I will not have to flash my yellow or red card that I have printed out. So just to kick this off.
West Side Story for aviation.
Hey, Jep. So just to kick this off this evening, I'd like to sort of frame the discussion to start off with based on the comments that came through in the first Rumble. So this was in May in 2001, where we were in the thick of the pandemic. You guys were at a very similar session that was moderated by Pete, and there were a few comments that came through, which I just wanted to pick up on and to get your reaction. So the first one was, the comment, Gerry, that you made about the recovery and how this was all very much dependent on the vaccine rollout. And if there was a vaccine rollout, that you would start to see international travel coming back. What we're seeing now is that there has been a vaccine rolled out, but because there's been different variants, recovery has been sporadic. So I just wanted to get your thoughts on that as a start. And then Jep, we'll come to you as well in terms of some of the comments that you've made. You were extremely bullish. You were of the opinion that based on cycles and where we are, there was a belief that we should all be doubling down, and this was the exact right time to come into the market. So just those two comments initially to start, Gerry and Jep, and then we can kick off.
Hey, Marlon, thanks. Yeah, there has been a vaccine rollout. I think there's been an unleveled, or a bumpy vaccine rollout, right? And you've seen that, and it's not necessarily that Delta followed by Omicron. I think one of the biggest shocks for me of 21 was the fact that people were surprised that there was a second variant. I mean, there was always going to be a second variant. There was going to be a third variant, a fourth variant. There's going to be multiple variants. And I think, one of the things I said in May was, and Melinda Gates said it, I think in April or May as well, was that, and I was quoting her, and she came out and said, if we don't take care of the world in terms of a vaccine rollout and we just look after ourselves, and we've a very nationalistic type approach to healing, which is what the world has done, then there will be pockets of places where this will mutate into different variants, and certainly we might be surprised by it. Which, not saying that happened exactly, but it was pretty close, right? Omicron came around, caught a lot of people by surprise. I think what you're finding now is, I think a lot of people are kind of getting fed up with it. Omicron has proved to be a weaker, certainly for those who are vaccinated, a weaker variant than the Delta variant. There's less hospitalizations, although it passes through from person to person much quicker. It's obvious that it can't be controlled at borders, no matter what people do. Like Singapore has done an amazing job of keeping its borders shut for a long period of time and keeping Delta out. But now Omicron is not everywhere, but it's in a good deal of places. So the reality is that if this follows the same path as Spanish flu and other things, over time it will wane. It will become aggressive in terms of its ability to pass from body to body, but hopefully it becomes like the flu. So this potentially is, with Omicron, is potentially the beginning of the end. Now, how long that end is going to be and that tail is going to wag, I don't know, right? But so I think in relation to international travel, I think a lot of that is just to do with the kind of uneven, vaccine rollout that's happened in different countries. There's no global uniformity. There's no, global reaction to this in terms of providing, a one-stop solution, which everybody is bought into. There's, like I got COVID over Christmas. I was unlucky. Couldn't go to the US to visit my family. So was going to go to Dubai on my way back to Singapore. Couldn't get into Dubai because I couldn't get a clean PCR test for 10 days. Came back to Singapore, but had to stay 2 weeks because you couldn't get board a flight to Singapore until 14 days after your PCR positive test. So it just created a domino effect of chaos, right, for international travel. And as long as this inconsistency is in existence between different governments and how they're reacting to it, and different regions how they're reacting to it, international travel has still got a big problem.
It sounds like you've still got COVID, Gerry.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, any thoughts from you?
Yeah, so, when we talked in May, I mean, we're living in it right now. We're living in the situation. So everything is adapting. People are adapting to the situation. Obviously, what's happening, if you look at how we behaved in March of 20 and how we're behaving now, we're learning how to live with this. And as I said, everything is adapting. I think what's important. So I look at this as a micro aspect and a macro aspect. So the macro aspect, yeah, I'm still bullish. I mean, you look at what's happening in our space. I mean, AerCap buying GCAS and Cerberus buying AMCK, and Cerberus buying Fly, or I'm sorry, Carlisle, I should say. You have this activity that's where people are building market share. There was a lot of that in the beginning of the pandemic, where you saw people like Altiver and going out and doing big sale leasebacks and building market share. And there's a lot of that going on. So that's the macro, and that cycle aspect of this that I talked about in May, I think is still there. But I think the biggest risk or the biggest concern that I have in this part of the pandemic is the change in behavior. This thing's gone on now 2 years. And the question is what is happening with people's behavior, their cycles and their daily cycles, and how they live their life, and when they go on vacation and how they go on vacation, and whether your office is open, and if your office is home working versus office working. So what's happening is that behavior is changing. And now, because international travel has basically been shut down, I mean, there was that small period of time, in the summer, fall, where it was building up again, and then pow, this thing hit, and we're back to, I think I told you guys in the practice session that there was a flight from London to Orlando with one passenger on it. Obviously, they're going to fly that flight because they got to fly people home, and they're full of cargo on the bottom, but that's not sustainable. And so the question is, after we get out of this, what is going to be the impact of this change in behavior of people? They're more staying in the area where they live. They're vacationing nearby where they live. They're driving more. They're staycations, if you want to call it that. And so I think that is one of the biggest things that I see. You have the impact of Zoom. I mean, this thing, for example, normally we would probably have at a conference, or but here we are doing it on Zoom. So that's the biggest thing that I see going forward, is what is going to be the impact of the market on that. On the market share side, I mean, I think I still think that it's dynamic, and I think if you pick the right aircraft, and you have the right mix in your portfolio, it could be fantastic over the next 4 or 5 years.
That's quite interesting. I mean, I was speaking to an airline recently, and they actually love the fact that roadshows are now conducted via Zoom, because they're much more efficient. They don't have to schlep from place to place to meet with investors. They do it all in a day, and they actually meet a lot more and get a lot more done because of Zoom. But that takes away, I think if that were to happen, that's going to kill our industry, right? So
be careful what you wish for.
Well,
I mean, obviously, yeah, go ahead, Gerry.
I just think it's ironic that an airline says wishes for Zoom to be successful because it just kills their business.
Right.
Absolutely. No, absolutely right. Yeah. So what surprised you guys in terms of, the resilience of our industry over the past year? I mean, what you've mentioned it, the number of lessors that are being purchased. So obviously the money's still there, but what surprised you over the past year about, whether or not it's the industry, people's behaviors?
I think resilience is the word, right? That is the buzzword at the moment. Is like it survived. I mean, we have been to the gates of Hades and kind of stared them in the face and walked away from it, not say relatively unscathed, but to live another day. The support from the governments and the importance of aviation to the commercial world in terms of how the global economy operates is obviously massive. I mean, there's $250 billion of government assistance went into airlines in the last kind of year and a half, and it's probably waning now, but I don't think it's finished. I think there's more to come, right? There's certainly carriers in Europe that are going to benefit from that over the next coming months. I think the other surprise I mentioned earlier was the concept that there wouldn't be another variant, and this kind of caught everybody by shock. That when we came through Delta, kind of middle of the summer, everyone thought that everything was going to be great again, and that kind of caught people a little bit in the back foot, which is surprising. I think the robustness of the trading market and how quickly that's bounced back on the secondary market in terms of aircraft lessors and financiers looking for deals has been quite interesting. And I think that the last two things, one is the volume of new money and the quality of backer that's provided. So it's not mom and pop shop with trying to buy a couple of engines here or there. You've got big private equity players with deep pockets coming into the business, buying up, you're part of it, Marilyn, but trying to buy up, getting good groups of senior executives that are well experienced to set up platforms with not a lot of assets to start, right? And then they're going to build out that. And there's been, if you look at like Blackstone, Ares, like Apollo's obviously around with Merck's, and the volume of those that have come in has been interesting. But I think the single biggest factor to come out, the two biggest things that have come out of it for me is the biggest thing that's come out of COVID has been ESG, which I know we're going to talk about later, and how that has become front and center of every single conversation is the environment. And the second big, most important thing is the level of indebtedness that has been required to get us to this position. And that has, as everybody knows about debt, that has huge pitfalls when you don't have a lot of levers to pull. And the reality is that the global aviation industry doesn't have a lot of levers to pull at this point in time. It needs to be relatively plain sailing now for the next number of years to get their balance sheets repaired and to commit to those refinancing obligations. Because if it doesn't, there's something simple. It could be the straw that breaks the camel's back, and that will be quite concerning.
I agree, and that brings us actually to the next point that we wanted to discuss today, and that really relates to airlines. So let's chat a bit about airlines. I mean, as you've rightly said, Gerry, the level of debt that the airlines have raised is stunning. I mean, I was reading somewhere that in 2021 alone, just unsecured debt issued by the airlines was at 63 billion. That's just unbelievable. And that's an increase from 2020 and a doubling from 2019. And we're not just talking American carriers, we're talking European carriers and some African carriers as well. So this is clearly something that's going to be an issue which they will need to tackle going down the road. And with the buildup of debt, with Omicron, with the various variants, with recovery shifting to the right, I mean, where do you see this going? Will we see more restructurings, potentially bankruptcies in 2022? will we see airlines coming back to ask for more? We had a whole host of requests coming in 2020 that we saw of. Do you think that will repeat itself in 2022? Jet, maybe I start with you on this one.
No, I mean, I think it's a big problem. I you know, when the COVID hit in 2020, all this cash came piling in. It wasn't just the airlines either. I mean, Boeing got a ton of money from the government as well. And so the question is, what's going to happen after this is all over? I mean, it was great that they got the money and they were able to keep their people employed and things like that. But what is going to happen if this thing goes on for a while, which it now has, with that little respite that we had in the fall? And then, you know, what are those balance sheets going to look like, and how? And Gerry said it. I mean, how long is it going to take them to right their ships? And the bigger issue that I see in all this is when you have all this liquidity coming in from the private sector and also from the governments, it launches inflation. And now all of a sudden, everything is more expensive. Everything. I mean, shipping is more expensive. Parts are more expensive. You know, salaries. I mean, personnel is more expensive. I mean, you have this massive amount, this shifting of people leaving their jobs. I think the other thing that surprised me in the last year was the impact of Omicron as it relates to the operation of businesses. Airlines obviously is one. You know, we've had a lot of cancellations in the United States. I don't know how it's been outside the US, but because they don't have people, because people get sick, they can't operate flights. So flights are canceled. That's having an impact. Same thing's happening to other businesses, service industries like hotels and restaurants, where some businesses have to close. So you know, it's gonna, the impact of this variant as opposed to the first one or Delta, it's been huge, and it's going to take a long time for them to deal with this debt that they've all got on their balance sheets. And it launches all kinds of things. I mean, one of the things that did start happening, fortunately for a lot of the airlines, is they got the refleeting started. A lot of new aircraft are being put into the fleets. And so, you know, you could see where this could have an impact on older aircraft potentially. Because if the airlines have to right themselves and they have to reset their fleets, I mean, it's going to have an impact on older aircraft. And how old is old? I mean, that's one of the things that we're going to have to figure out as we go on this.
Gerry, anything from you?
No, just to touch on the deferral point. I think, you know, for the most part, not everybody rode in behind the idea that the airlines are top of the food pyramid, and if they don't get fed, nobody else gets fed, right? And most lessors and financiers complied with, you know, reasonable requests from airlines in the last 18 or so months to try and help them get to this kind of, you know, get them past go, essentially, to use a monopoly phrase. You know, I think that lessors, banks, and everybody else who are lenders into the sector or providers of capital into the sector will be a little bit more reticent to deferral requests over the next 12, 18 months. I think that you're going to see, I personally, you know, you've got a lot of these deferral requests are now coming due, right? And suddenly you've got, you know, instead of rent, it could be, you know, 130% rent, 140% rent, into an environment where demand is still sketchy, right? So there's still not a lot of demand out there. Yes, there's pent up demand, but there's not really bums on seats. And there's not a lot of high yield traffic coming back on seats. So business travel is lagging as well. It's all VFR, domestic and local regional. So when you're suddenly got this double whammy, you know, of the airline now being asked to pay an increase of rent because they've got to pay back this deferral over the next 12, 18 months or 6 months, whatever it is. You know, it's going to be interesting, particularly if there's a lag in the summer, right? If the summer goes sideways in Northern Europe, or sorry, in the Northern Hemisphere between in Europe and in America, then, you know, all bets are off again. I mean, it's, you know, I think you're going to see airlines, and we've seen it, you know, we see some airlines coming back and saying, look, you know, we're being asked now, instead of paying arbitrary number, 100 grand a month, we've got to pay 150 grand a month. they're saying, look, we just don't have the cash flow to do that. We can do 100. Can we start a deferral back in 6 months' time or 7 months' time? And I think a lot of lessors are going to look at that on a case-by-case basis, see how important that relationship is to them, and try and figure out a way. And I also think that they'll be looking at a way to try and leverage positions, particularly if anybody has any new orders. So if there's new deals to be done, or there's new opportunities to be able to do it, and they can leverage that, that's probably a way that they'll do it as well. So, I don't think we're completely out of the woods yet. I don't think we've seen the last of the deferral requests. I just think they'll take on a different shape over the next 6 months.
And recovery is very regionalized, right? I mean, so, as between the US, Europe, and Asia, which are you sort of, well, it's very clear which you're most concerned about, but where do you see that heading? I mean, the recovery has been slow, specifically in Asia. Are there any lessons that perhaps, the Asian economies can learn from the US and Europe, especially with the opening up of the US and Europe in the recent sort of, 6 to 12 months?
Well, I think the biggest thing that has to happen, and this is the big challenge that's happening in the world today, as far as cross-border travel, for example, is that people are going to have to learn to live with this. I mean, the one good thing about Omicron is that a lot of people are getting it. It's not as severe. And so, the mentality is, okay, if I get this, at least I'll have the antibodies, and then I can, open up my world a little bit more. And I think that behavior and that adaptability has got to manifest itself in the market on a cross-border basis. And, Singapore is a perfect example. I mean, to get Gerry's challenges being in Dubai and going to Singapore and going to the United States, I mean, that all has to change in the context of learning how to live with this instead of just shutting borders down. I mean, that's not sustainable, as we all know. So I think that is going to be something that countries, as they are relating to each other, are going to have to begin adapting to. But that takes time.
Yeah, as long as you've got, essentially a dysfunctional, non-cohesive, non-uniform strategy, it's going to be chaos, right? I mean, you're going to have one country shutting borders, another one having ART tests, another one doing PCR, another doing this, another stay at home notice for 7 days. And as long as that exists, then, and Asia's been unfortunate to a certain point. Unfortunately, I think it's been badly led in a lot of countries. It's just that there's a mixture of a lot of different countries with a lot of different ideals. And unlike in Europe, with Britain and Europe, Europe has kind of slowly adopted a similar approach across the 27 nation bloc, right? The US is fine because it's one country, so people just travel domestically. So everywhere there's big domestic networks, China, North America or the United States, Mexico even has done very well, and Europe to a certain extent, and they've bounced along pretty okay domestically. It's just when you start going into real third border, so say if you want to go from Europe to somewhere else, it just becomes more challenging. And the other thing is that the cost of testing, right? This testing lark, that exists now for, probably the right reason, at some point in time, it's got to go. I mean, or it's got to become, you can produce a $2 kit at the airport that you can take and just show to the person to get on the flight, because, it costs us a fortune in trying to getting testing, going from here to Dublin, to the States, to back, and, we're in a privileged position to be able to get it done, but it adds up, and people won't, your ordinary long haul traveler who's going away, in economy to fly to Mexico from Europe for a holiday isn't going to go and want to spend several $100s on, probably the same price as their ticket on getting testing for trying to get in and out of a country, and then running the risk of not being able to get back in the country and being stuck somewhere else. So we need to get, by the end of this year, if that's not on track, then I think we've got serious problems.
And it's exactly right. If you're a family of four trying to travel from Asia to Europe or the US and then going to multiple countries in Europe, and you start adding up all the costs of the tests, just doesn't make sense.
It made for us to get from Europe to Ireland, and I got stuck in Ireland to get back here. I mean, it was well north of $1,000. I think it was $1,200-$1,300 between the four of us, and that's not sustainable. I mean, you know, you can in the back in the glory days in 2018, 2019, you could travel like an economy from Asia to Europe for, you know, $500-$600. So, you know, when you're putting 50% load for testing just on the top of a back of a ticket, it makes no sense.
Okay, I noticed that there are a couple of Q&A questions. We'll take most of them at the end, but there are some that are potentially sort of relevant, and I'll raise them as and when we go through some of the topics that we're being that are being discussed. So if we turn around now to the next big topic, I think that we have, and that's lessors. Obviously, we've seen, and Jeb, you've mentioned this, quite a few acquisitions recently, AMCK, Goshawk. What are your thoughts in terms of, and of course the largest one, which is GCAS and AerCap last year? What are your thoughts in terms of whether we will start to see more consolidation in the year ahead? You know, the impact of possibly a lot of this new money coming in. Will they change the way funding and leasing is done, both in terms of the debt funds that we're seeing and potentially some of the private equity guys? And then associated with that, I think, is a question that we could potentially take at this juncture, which is the amount of high competence people that are leaving our industry for other industries because of the long-term impact of the pandemic on aviation. Now, the question that's being asked is, how do we anticipate being able to retain or continue to attract talent into this industry? So, Jeb, do you want to go ahead? Put you on the spot.
I mean, you know, I've been saying for years that I mean, what I've been doing all my career in buying and selling airplanes is not sustainable, you know, in the long term. I mean, you know, I made a joke years ago that it was 90% BS and 10% who you know, and I stand by that. I mean, it's all about contacts. It's all about positioning. It's all about, you know, creating a deal, but that's really hard to do today, especially, you know, with the amount of capital and the amount of institutional participation that there is in the market today. You know, it's funny because years ago, Tony Ryan was always talking about how, you know, it was going to be a commoditization of the aircraft business, and that's essentially what's happened. You know, and so when you have these companies that are growing the way they are, now it's all about market share. It's all about how many aircraft you control, how many lessees you have as customers, how many aircraft you have with those lessees, because you begin doing this in a strategic way rather than a incremental way with aircraft. It now becomes, you know, big chunks of capital that you're moving around. I think the people thing is a real one. I mean, there are so many opportunities for people in the tech space, in the ESG space, that are new and dynamic, and in many cases a lot more lucrative for employees, as opposed to aircraft. I mean, back in the 80s, 70s, and 80s and 90s, I mean, aircraft were the cool new thing, especially in the 70s and 80s, when operating leasing started. And there was the Wild West, and you were able to really do cool stuff and make a lot of money in the business. And now that's all, you know, become commoditized. And now it's an institutional thing. And so a lot of the people, you know, are looking at this saying, what am I going to do? You know, sitting in a cubicle and just crunching numbers and, you know, working for 40 years and getting a gold watch. And the problem, I think, is that that's a real thing. I mean, that is happening. You know, I've seen it happen with some of the people that I know in the business. So it's something to be concerned about for sure.
Yeah, I think that, look, I think there's a couple of things. One is that this, you know, 2-3 years ago, you had a lot of, like, I remember when I came into this 20 years ago, you kind of knew everybody in the industry, right? And then I remember being at an event about 6-7 years ago in Dublin, and I knew about 5% of the people. There was like 400 or 500 people there. And you guys were like, wow. And it was all young people, right? And there was a lot of younger people come in, and it was fantastic to see a lot of diversity, a lot of women coming in, a lot of just really bright people from college come in. And I think when you look back on it, you know, they came in at a great time when the industry was riding high and everything was great. And I think if you ask a lot of them, they probably think that they've been sold a bit of a pup in the last couple of years, because suddenly, you know, you're not flying anywhere, you're not going out for nice dinners, you're not going to other countries, you're not meeting people in far distant places, and suddenly the kind of coolness of the job has dissipated a lot. The reality is that I think it's twofold. One is that there's an element to that. I think there is a commoditization element to it as well. But that will come back. Air travel is going to come back. People, interpersonal meetings are going to come back. Getting in front of airlines, lessors, banks, whoever it is, and meeting with them face to face is still as important today as it was 20 years ago, and will still be important in 5 or 10 years time. And relationships, as Jeff said, are going to be great. I do think there's an element of, people have got kind of fed up with it, right? I think there's, a bit of, there's a lot of pressure on senior management across all the industries. There's probably a lot of shouting and screaming going on, in boardrooms and in, office halls and floors as well, that I'm sure. And people aren't used to it. And suddenly this kind of cool, relaxed, chill out thing, we're going to finance aircraft all around the place, suddenly manifests to the C-suite level, comes screaming and shouting about why my airline's not getting paid. And people have probably just said, particularly millennials, right, have said, not just them, but like all over, just said, I don't need this. There's better things for me to do, and I'm going to decide to go off and do something else. And look, I think the industry is kind of finding itself in that level now. I think that there are some people who have just decided, I don't want to be part of this, and often left. I think there's other people who if they do stick it out over the next 12, 18 months, I think will realize that, we will get back to where we were, and it will still be a cool industry. I think attracting people in, is going to be an intriguing thing, right? I think from the lessor side of things, we've never really had an issue getting talent in, right? I think on the airline side of things, from talking to some of the airlines in the US, there's a significant issue, particularly on the engineering side of things, mechanics side of things, where you've got real competition from other industries where their skill sets can go off to tech or go off to wherever they want to do. And there's a big inflationary problem there in terms of wage structure, and how that's going to play itself through is going to be massive over the next 2 to 3 years. And you're seeing that right across the board, particularly on the technical side of things. So look, I think on the financing side of things, I think we will continue to be able to attract talent, because we're not that big. We don't, it's not as if there's 2 million people working in this industry in the financing side of things. On the airline side, I think it's very different.
What about consolidation? I mean, that's also part of the question. Do you think we'll see more ahead? There are, with AerCap and GCAS, it does seem like, the top 3 lessors, as an example, will own the majority of the lease fleet. So, how will that work out in terms of, those further down the food chain?
But just to touch on something that Jeff had mentioned earlier on this, I think the biggest point of thing on consolidation is it's all about cost of funds, right? Okay, it's all about, if your cost of funds are the lowest in the business, you give yourself your best chance to be able to get the better return, right? And you can be more aggressive on certain deals versus others. And that's what's driving a lot of this right now. The question is that how much scale do you actually need? So do you need to be 60 billion, or can you be 10 billion? The reality is that you're 10, $12 billion, you're probably going to be investment grade, that you'll be able to drive your unsecured down, you'll be able to get, your cost of funds down, you'll be able to get your capital structure in a very strong place to be able to compete with most people in the industry, right? Okay. But if you're not at that level and you're below that, and you've got a big parent behind you, you probably need to sit there and think about, well, how are we going to play in this game? Are we going to be a onesie, twosie player trying to pick up little bits of stuff around the edges? or are we going to try and drive this investment grade cost of funding type piece and become this, what I would say is kind of a balance sheet player rather than kind of a funds type player? And, you know, I think there's going to be more consolidation. I think there's, you know, I think when you go down through it, you're going to see, you know, people are going to probably ask themselves, well, why are we here? Like AMCK, they probably ask themselves, you know, why are we in this? Like, we're not big, we're not small, we're just sitting here in the middle, you know, similar to Goshawk, and they end up getting sold, right? I think there's an awful lot of lessors in that kind of mold. They're not 400 aircraft, they're not 20 aircraft, you know, what are they going to be? And the question then comes over if there's going to be consolidation is valuation, because everybody's taking a hit. You know, all valuations have been taking a hit. And if somebody just wants to build a platform out and, you know, build that platform so they can have the sustainable low cost of funding on a go forward basis through getting investment grade, then they'll probably pay up for certain things. But I would suspect a little bit more M&A as we go forward.
Yeah, I mean, okay. I hate to say it, but I agree with Gerry.
Terrible. You're not allowed to agree. That's a red flag.
I mean, you know, I think one of the poster children here is Carlyle in, you know, buying Fly, buying AMCK. You know, they've definitely made a decision that they're going to expand their platform, and they're doing it the right way. I mean, I'm sure, you know, based on where pricing is on these deals, you know, if you look at them on an incremental aircraft value basis, I mean, I'm sure those of us who are traders would be like, oh my God, you know, I mean, how could you pay that much for an airplane? On the other hand, we'll get into it when we get into the OEM conversation. But, you know, the other wild card here is China. You know, I mean, some of the economics that are being driven with Chinese capital is not related to IRR, it's related to exchange rate. You know, and IRR for that matter. I mean, you know, the kind of IRR based on, you know, the renminbi exchange rate is hard to compete if you're just on a vanilla IRR treadmill with US dollars, you know, which the industry is done in. So, and that's a hard thing to do. So when you see these deals getting done by, you know, US or European like AerCap and Carlyle, you can understand what's driving this in the context of market share. I mean, Gus Kelly is amazing. Gus Kelly was the guy in the industry who ended up buying ILFC and GCAS. I mean, just that alone puts him at the top of the heap in the aircraft trading and leasing Hall of Fame. So I think that that, you know, in line with what we were talking about, there's going to be there's going to be more M&A for sure in the lessor space.
But Jeff, the interesting thing about China is the problem that China has isn't capital. The problem that China has is the requirement for regulatory approvals if they do M&A transactions, right? So we've seen China dominating the sale and leaseback market right across the globe at the moment, right? And they have driven down lease rate factors to levels which, you know, what I think would be unsustainable, but it's an FX play, right? It's got to be an FX play, right? Because it doesn't make any sense on dollar play. Excuse me. But I don't see, I could be wrong, but unless China Inc. is going to push, you know, M&A and give a blanket approval for it, which I don't think that's happening in the interim, because I think China's got bigger domestic issues to sort out first. I just don't see that China being a big M&A player. And I know there's all the rumors about CDB and Avalon going around a few weeks ago, but I just don't see them going down that path. I think they can probably pick off lower hanging fruit without having Beijing opining on every single transaction on bilateral primary market deals rather than doing M&A, although they have the capital to do it if they wanted to. But I think
yeah, but you know, the thing about China that's interesting on a overall level, I mean, if you look at how they've been behaving in the world, and I think we'll get into this too, but if you look at it, they're out collecting anything related to infrastructure, airports, ports, ships, what have you. I mean, they're in Africa, they're all over, they're in the stands, they're in South America, they're everywhere. And that aircraft is part of that. So if you sit down and look at, okay, how many aircraft are in the world and how many airplanes are owned by Chinese companies, that's part of that infrastructure strategy from my viewpoint. And so there is this big movement of that infrastructure, meaning aircraft, especially younger aircraft that are going to be around for a while. And so that's another thing to kind of keep an eye on.
Is that why, that explains why they're winning all these deals and why we're not even getting a sniff? Is that right?
Partially, yeah. Well, and an FX, we just talked about, I think is
yeah. Yes.
Well, but Marilyn, on that, I also think it's a supply issue, right? I mean,
absolutely. Yes.
We're talking this in the OEM side, is that the MAX has been gone and is only back. The 320 and 320 Neo has had supply issues in terms of supply chain. Both manufacturers have had issues in terms of delivering stuff on time. There was engine stuff going on beforehand. So, so suddenly there's been a significant lesser amount of aircraft available on new tech to people. And suddenly with all the balance sheets being encumbered because airlines have been selling everything they possibly can to finance themselves out of the pandemic, suddenly there's been, a clamp down or a kind of a push down through of demand, because a lot of these lessors, not just China, but Japan and others, have got big balance sheets and budgets that they need to deploy. If they don't deploy them, they're going to get in trouble. So, I think we'll see a rebalancing of that in time, but that's going to need a requirement for more supply into the market.
Which brings us very neatly into our next topic, actually. And just looking at the time, I want to touch on this because I think it's important, and that is really in relation to the OEM. So there are a couple of issues that we want to deal with on the OEM, but let's talk first about supply chain issues and how both of these manufacturers are dealing with it. Obviously, they're trying to ramp up. Everyone's trying to ramp up, but we're seeing huge supply chain issues, which are pushing deliveries further out to the right. Now, what do you think Boeing and Airbus can do about this? Let's just deal with that sort of supply chain issues first, and then move on to the next part of the question.
From the OEM perspective, there are three things that have happened in this cycle which we haven't had happen ever in any other cycle that we've had, or cycle trigger. One is supply chain. Two is groundings, whether it be for COVID or because of MAX, which happened earlier than COVID. And three is supply chain. And the impact in the market, I think, is being underestimated, and the effect of those things in the fact that we have a bucket of aircraft that would have been here if they had been making 100 airplanes, on the narrow body between Boeing, MAX, and Airbus A320 and 321 over this period of time from when the MAX was grounded, Omicron hit, and where we are today. It's a number of aircraft. It's a lot of aircraft because these aircraft weren't built. And so the question now is, what is going to be the impact of that in the next rockstar market, let's say 25, 26, 27, where those airplanes don't exist. And now will that mean that newer aircraft that are delivered are more valuable? Will that mean that older aircraft that are still in operation will be in operation longer, which will mean they're more valuable? Will aircraft in general be more valuable? I think people, if you look at the behavior, people are betting that is going to be the case, that there isn't enough aircraft that are going to be out there to support the rising market, which is going to happen at the end of this decade. And it's going to be a problem. Gerry, I'll let you talk to that. But the other thing I think we need to talk about, Marilyn, which you're going to bring up, is parity. So.
Yeah, it's interesting. You've got a pricing issue as well, right? So you've got Boeing, wrongly or rightly, people would probably say wrongly, reacted, whatever it is, 10 years ago to the Neo being produced or announced, and created this, created this aircraft that wasn't fresh from plan. It was a kind of a hybrid, and that is now the Max. And I think that's caused them, I think if they were to go back, excuse me, if they were to go back and redo the whole, have a do-over in American speak, they would probably do it straight from plan and take their time in doing it. And the reality is that Boeing are now playing kind of a 2.5-year catch-up on Airbus, at least, if not more. And Airbus have filled their boots with all the major airlines globally, and are continuing to do it. And if you talk to people in Airbus, they've got very, very strong price discipline now, and they're not going to lower their prices for any new deal. Whereas Boeing, if they want to come into the market, they have to drop their shorts, so to speak, right? And
it depends on the customer. It depends on the buyer.
No,
the Allegiant deal is a perfect example.
Exactly right. But Airbus now can go, because of the share that they have in the market, can go toe to toe with Boeing and push them down as much as they want, and Boeing will have to drop as far as they want to go in order to win that customer, because at the end of the day, they need market share. I mean, the debate of whether it's 50-50, 60-40, 40-60, but it's not moving into parity. But it's not long ago that Airbus isn't around that long. Okay, like it's like whatever it is, 25 years of producing kind of these aircraft, maybe it's 30, but it's not that long, right? And suddenly you had a McDonnell Douglas and Boeing and a bunch of other people floating around, and it all became Boeing, and suddenly Boeing, and then you got this small guy in France and Germany and the UK just comes out with this, just amazing, did an amazing job of selling themselves and selling their product. And you look at it now, and the reality is that Airbus is probably the dominant player in this market. And, Boeing has got significant problems from a corporate standpoint in terms of getting itself through this. And, from a relationship standpoint in terms of how they can win back this market and what they can do, because they can't keep, going in at, significantly below market deals to try and win market share, because ultimately that's going to impact the residual value of the rest of the deals that they've done. And that's going to cause a significant problem. Whereas, when you look at Airbus, like if you're buying a Max today, and you see the example of the Allegiant deal, like we don't know the pricing on it, but we know that Allegiant, Maury will drive the best deal in town of most airlines around the world. I think that when you look at that and you look at potentially other deals that Boeing have done, you're probably going to question yourself and say, is my Max worth this, or should it be worth this pricing over here? I think there's a big question on residual values if they maintain this over the next couple of years.
Yeah, but I think that the whole Boeing thing, you talked about it when they made the decision in 2010 to do the derivative, is going to be an amazing Harvard Business Review case analysis in the next 30, 40 years. And I think I felt bad for the guys at Boeing, because they're sitting there looking at this saying, they just got finished with the 787 where they went wildly over budget. And if they went out and launched another aircraft, their stock was going to get killed, because everybody wasn't going to believe that they were going to make a new white piece of paper airplane for $15 billion. They knew it was going to be double or more than that. And they had no choice, because they're in a business which is a strategic business over 10, 15, 20, 30 years. And they're making 90-day decisions because they don't want the stock price to go down. And so, they made that decision back in 2010, and here we are. And I think it's longer than 2 years. I mean, they've got to build an airplane that's going to compete with Airbus, but Airbus is thinking the same thing. They're looking at what are we going to build after the Neo? And that gets into the whole ESG thing. Is electric coming, or is that going to be proliferating to the point where it's going to be big enough to work in the industry? There's a whole lot of things here. And at the end of the day, I mean, Boeing has decisions to make. But then you get back to this debt thing that we talked about, where everybody's gone through COVID. They got a massive amount of debt. It's going to be really difficult for Boeing to go to the market and say, we're going to launch a new airplane, and it's going to cost us $25 billion to do it. Well, where are you going to get the money? could be government support. Who knows? I mean, it's a real pickle that they're in right now. But right now, I think the bigger issue, in my opinion, that the airline's going to have to think about is they obviously don't want Airbus ending up with a 70-80% market share, because they're doing what they're doing. They're holding on their pricing, which they absolutely should. And this whole market share thing is becoming an issue. And I think there's going to be people who are going to order the MAX that might not have wanted to order the MAX, simply to keep this 50-50 parity going down the road, because it's in the interest of everybody to have that. It's a tough prospect, but it's gonna manifest itself for sure.
So that's on the narrow side, right? I mean, what about the wide body side? Because I don't think Airbus are completely out of the woods on that. I mean, they do have some issues. I mean, what do you see in terms of the future for the 330 as an example?
It's very difficult at this moment in time to think about any wide body aircraft that's going to be a success, right? Maybe the 787 is going to do the job. It's been around a reasonable amount of time, but it's just where long haul traffic is, where orders are meant to be coming in. How Airbus and Boeing are trying to push out, be it 78 or 330 neos or 350s. This is the most challenging next 4 to 5 years probably that they're going to see. I mean, this isn't a 12, 18 month blip for long haul travel. If this is going to be, this is a systemic change that's happened in the mindset of people traveling. And if people are going to get comfortable wandering around Europe instead of going from Europe to Asia or Europe to the States, they'll do that. And if they do that for enough period of time, they'll just get happy doing it, and they'll keep doing it every year. And I think long haul travel has got a significant amount of catch up to in order to get it back anywhere close to what it was a number of years ago. You could be looking at 2025, 26, 27 before you see significant the 2019 levels in long haul travel again. Like, I would be very concerned for it. So with that, I think there's a massive question mark over all wide body aircraft.
But that also creates opportunity. I mean, in the wide body space. I mean, the A330 is a perfect example of that. I mean, back in the day, when the DC-10 was the analogy that I could use here. I mean, the DC, we had the same conversations back in the 80s. Oh, wide bodies is over. The DC-10 went from 40 million down to 10 million, and traders Gunnar Bjork made a pile of money buying aircraft at $10 million and then selling them for $40 million. And I could see where, you look at the A330.
The 767 and the 78 is a perfect example.
Yeah, I mean, the 76 is a perfect example with the cargo application. But the A330, for example, I mean, before COVID, those aircraft are trading in the $60-65 million range for COs. And you could pick those airplanes up now, arguably for 20. I mean, that's the kind of pricing change that we saw with the DC-10 back in the 80s. And I think that, considering the fact that the A330-300 has a cargo application, and that it's an aircraft that has a lot of operators, that could be this cycle's DC-10. I mean, I think there are some guys out there that are looking at that very closely, coming in. Now, the question is, what do you do with the airplane right now? That's the wild card. Do you just sit it on the ground and wait for the market to come to you? And it's a different bet than if you're buying an airplane for 10 million versus 20 or $25 million, that and hoping that the market's going to come back. Because I agree with you, Gerry, it's going to come back, but it's going to, and it could, and when it comes back, I think, this whole behavior thing I talked about before, one of the things that'll happen is that when people get comfortable to travel, we're going to see a trajectory that's going to go pretty high quick, but it's got to work itself through. I think on the OEM side, we talked about it before. I mean, Airbus getting KLM has been a US OEM operator since they started with McDonnell Douglas and Boeing, and now they've gone to Airbus. Qantas went to Airbus, and Airbus lost Allegiant, but I think they're cool with that, by getting KLM and Qantas. The other aircraft that I just want to name shout is the A220. Saw the order with Azora, which I'm so proud of John in doing. I think that is a great, great thing. I love that airplane. It's the latest technology white paper airplane that's flying today. The economics of the airplane and the ESG aspect of the aircraft is unbelievable. And I think that aircraft eventually is going to play a role in the next upcycle going forward in the late 20s. So.
That's fantastic, because I think you've just answered one of the questions that have come through in terms of the impact on the regional space, and which aircraft do you think will be the front runner in terms of future utilization? Gerry, do you agree? 220?
Yeah, we own 220s, and we had Airbus come in to us about 18 months ago and talk us through it. And we didn't know a lot about the aircraft at the time, and it was amazing when they run through the actual stats, the economics of it, the operational efficiency of it. I mean, it's a fantastic aircraft. It really is a fantastic aircraft. So, you know, I think it's here to stay. I think it's going to be a jewel in Airbus's kind of niche crown. It's not the 318, it's not the 319. It's a much better aircraft than that. And you know, I think you're going to see a lot more airlines, particularly with that kind of regional focus, that kind of that sector length kind of that isn't going, you know, transcontinental or, you know, kind of 2-3 hour segments, you know, those kind of, or sorry, 3-4 hour segments, those shorter segments. I think it's a very comfortable aircraft. I think, yeah, you're going to see an awful lot of carriers pick it up as they get educated on it in the coming years.
Next question, also related to the manufacturer. Now, what are your guys' view about COMAC?
I can do. I'm going to start off with that.
Potential to grab some of the market share in 10 years. Yes, no.
I look. I think any look, we've seen with, you know, Bombardier what's happened to that. They got shoveled into Airbus. Embraer, you know, failed or just didn't happen to get into Boeing, right? But that play was there as well. And whether that comes back at some other stage in the future, we just don't know. Or they go off to China or to Japan to make themselves bigger. They need to probably become more relevant. I think COMAC's going to struggle to get, you know, into the West, so to speak. It will do very good in China, but the Chinese market's massive. Right, the Chinese market is huge. The question is that, you know, can they? Like we always used to say it in you know, if you're a band in Ireland in the 1980s, you made it to the United States. Well, then you've made it. Everything's great. And the thing for, you know, COMAC is, you know, if they can make it into Western Europe or make it into North America, well, then they're done. They will be a big player because the amount of volume of capital behind them and engineering behind them. I just don't see it. I just don't see them coming in with any significant market share over the next 10 years into the West, so to speak. I do see them having a significant market share, though, of any regional stuff in China. Now, notwithstanding all that, there's all this geopolitical stuff goes on that's way above everything, and China could decide as part of a deal that they're taking 200 Airbus in, and as part of that suddenly Air France is operating COMAC, or just taking arbitrary names, you know, out of the sky for the moment. But, you know, there's that political game there that we'll never understand and we can't factor in. But I would think that all things being normal, I think they've got a hard job ahead of them of getting into Western Airlines.
Jeb, you agree? I mean, I think that's right.
Yeah, no, I think if any, you know, you look at the Superjet, you look at any, it's so tough to break into that bar. Look at Mitsubishi. I mean, it's so tough to break into any market, and even Embraer for that matter. I mean, it's just so difficult. And the question, you know, I know Chinese are doing it for a lot of the same reasons the Russians did it, but I don't know if I even agree with Gerry on getting market share in China. I mean, they'll sell airplanes in China, but, you know, it's going to be 5% market share. It's still going to have tons of Maxes and tons of Boeings and tons of Airbus and all that. I think, you know, we're touching on it. I think geopolitical instability, you know, what's going on in Russia and Ukraine and Kazakhstan right now, and China and Taiwan and all these dynamics are really going to have an interesting impact on this. I mean, if something happens where there is a real conflict between China and the West, that could have that's not going to be a thing that happens over a couple of weeks. It's going to be a protracted thing, and people will have an attitude about this and that. And, you have all these geopolitical things that are going on in Europe. I mean, you get all this talk about the Polish guy saying that Europe is closer to war than they've ever been in 30 years. I mean, that's not good for air travel, obviously. So, we'll have to wait and see how that all plays out, but that's something that we're concerned about, obviously, and decisions that we're making as it relates to China.
But Jeff, we talked about this because I have a slightly different take, so the rumble will start at the end. Is that, look, my take on this is twofold. One is that, that with the advent of the internet and Twitter and everything else that goes around, people see things a lot quicker and everything gets inflamed and ideas get inflamed very quickly. Also, people forget about things very quickly because they move on to the next story. I think all this geopolitical stuff is always there. It's just that we see it probably a little bit more today than we did maybe 10 or 20 years ago. I think it's always there. It's always been bubbling around. Russia has always been bubbling around. It's the stands and everything like that. One day it's Ukraine. Now they're focusing Kazakhstan because they know if Kazakhstan is a gateway into kind of Islam, right, or the Islamic countries of Afghanistan or Iran, and they do want to open that corridor into there. China has always, certainly as far as I can remember, has always been dilly-daddling around Taiwan, for want of a different expression, and Japan and South Korea and everything else that's going on. So I think, I would be surprised if you end up with a Bay of Pigs situation in Taiwan, right? I would think that there's going to be a lot of posturing, a lot of development of leverage for different things that are going on in the world, right? For be it semiconductors, be it machinery, be it clothing, whatever is going on. You've got a lot of this kind of creation of leverage, kind of nationalistic leverage for governments to be able to go to task against, whether it's Biden against Xi Jinping or Putin or somebody else. And I think that's always going to be there. I would be surprised if between Russia, China, and America that it really does come to significant blows. There may be proxy wars, as there has always been, but I would be surprised if the three of them get involved. So I will be carrying on business as is.
This is going to be a quote that I will use again in a year if you have a third rumble to see where things stand.
When we're in a nuclear bunker.
Exactly.
Right. Go ahead.
Go on, Jeff. One last comment from you.
No. I mean, I just wanted to say that these are the thing. The one thing I said before was that if something happens, whether it be a war in Ukraine or whatever, or an attack on Taiwan, is not going to be something that happens over a couple of weeks, because people get attitudes and stuff happens, and it's like turning a VLCC, So I think I hope that Gerry's right, to be honest, but I'm not. I think that the jury's still out. So, having said that, we'll see you next year.
So we're right at the top of the hour. I think we've dealt with most of the questions that have come through during the course of the chat as well. Any last thoughts from the two of you? Maybe 2 quick points in terms of where you see the year going forward from a travel and airline perspective. 2 minutes, Gerry.
Where I would like to see it, I would like to see Omicron become the norm. I would like to see the kind of pathway of a lot of disease that's happened is that it weakens as we go through the year. I'd like to see governments turning around and creating some uniformity about their decision making in terms of opening borders. And I think that if that happens, then we're out of the woods, right? I mean, there's a lot of things still to get through, but I think that would be very positive. I'd love to see Asia open up, and I think we're about 6 to 12 months behind the rest of the world. And I'd love to be able to see some sort of free travel again, right? That isn't going that cost a fortune in terms of testing. That there has to be some sort of, notion. I don't see any of that happening. I think that Omicron may become the norm, but I think that governments are going to lag. They're going to be petrified of any decision that's going to be made. I think there's going to be a lot of frustration pent up within democratic countries about how their governments are playing it and their kind of lack of mobility and stuff like that, and be able to freedom of travel. And I think there's going to be a lot of tension, I think, actually, in the world in the next 6 to 12 months, with people just getting fed up, being told to stay at home, being not told they can't go down to shops, they can't do this. And where that actually comes into play even more is places, not necessarily in places like the United States or Europe, but places like China, which has obviously got a big election coming up there, places like Russia, and that, what happens there, that, if there is some sort of political revolt or something like that in those countries, well, then that could be quite interesting in terms of what happens there. But yeah, we'll see. I think we're on it'll be a slower recovery than we all hope will be, but here's hoping.
A lot of it has become so political. You're absolutely right. I mean, it's, yep.
Yeah, I mean, I'll agree with Gerry in the sense that learning how to live with this, we have to adapt to this. I mean, this same thing happened back at the Spanish flu. It was a process, and I think that's the problem as it relates to our industry, because I'm not sure that we're in a recovery yet. I think it's just going to take some time. It could be a fairly quick trajectory of recovery, but I think we're still banging along the bottom here. I think my bigger concerns, in addition to the geopolitical stuff we talked about, is inflation. I think that, and supply chain and the impact of that on the OEMs and converting aircraft and all the things that we deal with in our market. It's going to increase the cost of capital. Interest rates are going to go up because they have to, because that's how you fight inflation. We've had this before, back in the early 80s. And those are the things that I think about as it relates to recovery. So.
Cool. Well, thank you very much, gentlemen. It's been a very interesting 1 hour, and we'll hope to see everyone again at some point in 2022.
Thanks.
Thank you, Marilyn. Thanks for
Jeff.
doing this.
Yeah,
see you, Gerry.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Bye,
Bye, everybody.
Bye, guys.
Take care.